matter. Point is like this. Chassidus came to the world to enliven the Jewish soul. Right? It was a period 250 years ago when the Jews were very downtrodden. It was after the Khmelnytsky massacres where they lost close to 1 million Jews in Europe. In the 17th century, in the late 1600s, and Baal Shem Tov was born 50 years later, half a century later. The Jews were dispersed, their communities were broken, and frankly, looking at what was happening, you would think there was no hope. Hasidus came down, the Baal Shem Tov began a movement to teach the people the real power that they have, drawing on the Kabbalah, drawing on the joy of the eternal soul, and bringing all that to life. I am a biased opinion. I'm a Breslover, and frankly, of all the Hasidic movements, and there are many, right? There are, especially in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, there were many, but nobody articulated the doctrine of Hasidus like Rabbi Nachman. That's my opinion. I'm biased. I'm a Breslover. If I wasn't a Breslover, I wouldn't say it. If I wasn't, didn't believe in it, I wouldn't be a real Breslover. I mean, Halavai, I should be considered a real Breslover, but let's say, right? We're talking about there's a doctrine out there of Hasidus. Now, if you really want to look at it, about the only Hasidus that goes back to the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, you have the Chabad, the Babbage, you have Karlin, and you have Breslov. All the other Hasidus were offshoots that developed in Poland or in Hungary 30 years, 50 years after the Hasidic movement, when already it was on its wane. That's when these Hasidic dynasties came up. Okay? Now, going back to the original Hasidus, each Hasidic master had his own way of delivering his message. Each one was different. There were two brothers, Rabbi Melech and Rabbi Zusha, right? But they were very different, very different. And you had the Balatanya from the Babbage, right? You had the Rebbe of Mezheritz, Rabbi Ephraim of Sedekah, the Degel Machni Ephraim. You had the Baditch of Arav. You had many Choizim of the Blind. You had plenty of tzaddikim that was so awesome we couldn't even begin to fathom their greatness. Each one had its doctrine, but that doctrine over the years fell away. Even Chabad today is very different than Chabad was 100 years ago or 50 years ago, especially after the last Babbage Rebbe passed away with the Mashiachas and whatnot. So just to give you an idea how things become distorted over the years, right? Okay. Breslov. What is Breslov? Rabbi Nachman taught. He has Likutei Moharan. He had a student, Rabbi Nosson, who is, as far as we are concerned, just like Rabbi Nachman in that sense. His teachings, the Rebbe himself chose Rabbi Nosson, appointed Rabbi Nosson to bear the torch of what Breslov is all about, to explain it, to bring it forth and whatnot. Anything that you do with Breslov, that is exactly the way Rabbi Nachman taught it, and you teach it that way, that is Breslov. Okay? Anything that is diverted from that original message so that it changes or its delivery is watered down, or stuff like that, it may be necessary according to the generation. It may not be necessary because it's according to the one who's doing it, and he's doing it the way he wants to distort it and teach it, rather than it being a message watered down. Now, I, in certain books, will take what Rabbi Nachman writes and I will cloak it. I will not give it in its full form. Because in a general sense, if you come to the English-speaking community, right, they're not capable of understanding Rabbi Nachman at his origin, and therefore they could distort it and make it even worse. So I will then sometimes water down, right, but it's exactly what Rabbi Nachman said, but you're not getting the full impact. But there are other ways to do that, where you teach Rabbi Nachman, and you cloak it in such a way that this is what suits me, and then therefore it should suit you too. That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Secondly, Rabbi Nachman taught that wherever there is like it's Newton's law of physics, so to speak, but that law is found in Kedusha, in holiness, in Torah, from King Solomon. Es zeh li umas zeh. This is opposite to that, right? There is good, and there has to be evil against it, because there has to be a balance in order for a person to have free choice. Okay? So, for every action, there's a reaction. Or for every area of good, there is an area of not good. If it's powerfully good, there will be a powerful evil against it. If it's not so powerfully good, so there will be evil against it, but not so powerful and whatnot. What you have, Rabbi Nachman is teaching us, is that there is a power of good that Rabbi Nachman taught, that Rabbi Nosson taught, other tzaddikim taught. There is that power of good. Where there is a power of good, there will automatically arise a power to counter that good, to cloak and conceal that good, so that you have free choice to seek and search for what is absolutely true and what could be false. Follow? That's a very fine line between the two. And yes, there have been many teachers in Breslov that have arisen in the last generation. I was fortunate. I was introduced to Breslov in 1958, 57 actually. My first trip to Israel, where I saw the Breslov community, was 1962. That was long before any of the modern day heroes in the Breslov movement arose. So I saw Breslov in its pristine condition. I witnessed it. I saw it. I saw what Breslov people were really about. And I've seen the rise of all the good guys who mean well, and all the charlatans who take advantage of it and whatnot. And that's what you have. Okay? So understand, you always have to look for what's right, what's wrong, what's original. It's the same thing in Torah. There's a stream in Judaism today, or they call it a stream in Judaism, it's called Reform Judaism, or Conservative Judaism, or Reconstructionist, or whatever, right? They call themselves full stream. They're just like the Orthodox. They're completely streams of Judaism. But are they? Ask yourself, what Judaism do they teach? Right? That you can be a goy, and you can marry a goy, and you can do whatever you want. Is that Judaism? You have to. They present themselves as a stream of Judaism. Well, you have to decide. You're the one who wants to choose now what to be. You want to be a Jew, so what kind of Judaism do you choose? Right? And this happens in everything. Right? You see it in Chabad. Right? What stream of Chabad you are. Right? You see that? And you have it in the Lifshei yeshivas too. Different things that come up and whatnot. It's that kind of a generation. Rabbi Nachman has a lesson 25 in the Kutam the first part. He says the person has to defeat his imagination, or rather not defeat, but subdue his imagination, so that it is subordinate to the intellect. Right? A person's intellect is a brilliant light. It's a brilliant light. A person, you can guide a person. You have intellect. You know what's right. You know what's wrong, right? So why is it that we always fall into pits, right? There was a lady, a satirist, Irma Bombeck. I don't know if any of you heard of her, right? She wrote a book. If life is a bowl of cherries, what am I doing in the pits, right? Life is a bowl of cherries. Life is wonderful. It's delicious. It's good. So many good things in life. What am I doing in the pits? That's the name of the book, whatever. But we ask ourselves the question, right? What are we doing in the pits? What is our life all about? What's going on here? So when we start thinking about that, right, it's because we have an imagination, right? Did you ever say, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you start rationalizing, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should change, maybe this, maybe that, whatever, right? You ever come at the end of a nice geschmack Shabbos meal, and you see that extra piece of strawberry shortcake or whatever it might be, right? I know I don't need it, right? Intellectually, I know I don't need it. But what's it going to hurt me after all? The rationalization. This is the person's imagination, all right? This is a person's imagination that runs wild and that misleads the person through everything that could happen. Or let's do it differently. The intellect is the person's mind. The mind understands what's right, what's wrong, right? When it comes to the heart, that's where our emotions are, right? And though this seems to me right, and still maybe, I have to worry about it, and I have to be compassionate. I have to be compassionate after all, this poor guy. So what if he murdered 30 people and he's up in Attica for several life terms and whatnot? He still has to be given, steaks and, at our taxpayer expense. But he has to be given televisions and a gym to work out. And, he murdered 30 people. What's the difference, right? No, but you got to have compassion. It's imagination. It's not real. It's not real. You're not having compassion on the people who are footing the bill, right? You're not having compassion on the families that were murdered and whatnot. Whatever it is, there's an imagination. So now the Gemara says in Sukkah, the Gemara says there are 7 names the Yetzer Hara has, right? Evan, a stone, right? Tzafoni, he's hidden in the person's heart. Michshol, he's a stumbling block. And there's a few others, I can't recall them at the moment, right? Rabbi Nachman said that in his generation already, which was when the Enlightenment came forth, right? It was the beginning of the 1800s. He said, now we have to call the Yetzer Hara a new name. It's called the imagination, right? And if you take a look what happened with Hollywood, those who may recall the films from 50 years ago, and what they can do today with computer graphics and whatnot, or the internet, the way the internet lets a person's mind run wild and whatnot, you can see that the imagination today is the Yetzer Hara of today, where this is realms that people never could even begin to fathom existed even 100 years ago.